This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Israel exposes Hezbollah cross-border tunnels intended to take over parts of the Galilee. And Israel's police chief recommends indicting Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Will it bring down his government? Plus, a Hanukkah celebration at the Western Wall, and 1 year since President Trump declared Jerusalem Israel's capital. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Julie Stahl, filling in for Chris Mitchell. The Israel Defense Forces launched a military operation along Israel's northern border with Lebanon to expose and destroy Hezbollah cross-border attack tunnels. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says the Iranian-backed Hezbollah was planning to use the tunnels to carry out a deadly infiltration and capture parts of the Galilee. Take a look. These are Hezbollah operatives making their way through an attack tunnel that ends inside Israel. The IDF distributed the footage showing the men approaching a hidden IDF camera, an explosion, and the men running away.
These cross-border terror tunnels were built by Hezbollah with direct support and funding from Iran. They were built with one purpose in mind: to attack and murder innocent Israeli men, women, and children. This is a grave violation of Israel's sovereignty.
IDF spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus said the IDF had been monitoring Hezbollah activity along the border for the last 4 years before it launched what it's calling Operation Northern Shield.
That operation is aimed to expose and to destroy cross-border attack tunnels that the terrorist organization Hezbollah has been digging from within civilian houses in Lebanon into Israel.
According to the IDF, this tunnel begins in the Lebanese village of Kfar Hila. It's about 650 feet long, including about 120 feet inside Israel, and is about 80 feet deep. This IDF graphic shows how the tunnel crosses the border. This footage shows how close the Lebanese population lives to the border and just how well they can see what's going on inside Israel. On the Israeli side, agricultural fields and orchards flank the border. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he had a message for the people of Lebanon.
Hezbollah is putting your lives in danger. They are sacrificing your well-being to serve the aggressive purposes of Iran. Israel holds the Lebanese government accountable for all terror activity emanating from Lebanon against Israel.
Since the end of the Second Lebanon War in 2006, UN Resolution 1701 required UN forces to essentially maintain a Hezbollah-free zone next to the border. But Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, said the UN's forces in Lebanon aren't doing the job.
This is a clear violation and a willful disregard of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. UNIFIL's mission is to prevent the buildup of arms and military infrastructure in southern Lebanon. Clearly, it is not doing enough.
Danon called on the UN to condemn Hezbollah's actions.
Israel has no interest in escalation, but we will do whatever it takes to defend our sovereignty and our citizens. The Security Council must condemn this terrorist threat.
So far, Hezbollah hasn't responded to the Israeli operation. In the meantime, Israel is continuing to expose and destroy the tunnels in an operation expected to last a few weeks. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem. The United Nations rejected a U.S.-sponsored resolution to condemn Hamas for its repeated attacks against Israel. The measure called on the group to end its terror campaign against the Jewish state, including last month's rocket assault on Israel's southern border. 87 countries voted in favor of the resolution, 57 opposed, and 33 abstained. It was not enough, however, to win the two-thirds majority needed to pass. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley blasted the United Nations for its anti-Israel bias.
The United Nations has never once passed a resolution condemning Hamas. Never. Over 700 resolutions condemning Israel, and not one single resolution condemning Hamas.
Hamas thanked the United Nations for rejecting the resolution. If passed, it would have been the first time in history the UN condemned the terror group. Political opponents of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are calling for him to resign after Israeli police recommended his indictment on charges of bribery and breach of trust. Netanyahu denies the allegations, and as Chris Mitchell reports, some believe the entire investigation adds up to a political coup by legal means.
The leader of Israel's far-left Meretz party demanded Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu step down.
A prime minister who is accused of the most serious offense for a public servant in the Israeli rulebook cannot keep serving for even one more day. He must resign today. Israel must go to elections.
Former Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni added to the chorus, saying Netanyahu reacted like a mob boss. Others see an entrenched bureaucracy at work.
We have some serious problems with what we call our deep state in Israel, where you have unaccountable clerks and public servants who stay on forever, and they have a very clear political agenda, which is not the agenda of the elected government or of the people who elected them.
Since the late 1990s, when Netanyahu first served as prime minister, he and his wife Sarah have faced 22 separate investigations.
The left, on the other hand, has completely discredited itself from so many different perspectives that it really has no chance of winning an election in the foreseeable future. They can't deal with the competence that he is bringing to bear in the prime minister's office that's making people like him or vote for him, even if they don't like him. And this is despite the fact that the media treatment of Netanyahu has been overwhelmingly and consistently negative for the past generation.
Middle East expert Carolyn Glick believes the police, the judiciary, and the media are determined to undermine Netanyahu. Glick sees a mirror image between what's happening here with Netanyahu and in the U.S. with President Trump.
They can't find an underlying crime, and so they're trying to go on process crimes. In Israel's case, in Netanyahu's case, they're saying that Netanyahu was bad because he made a deal which was legal, that the regulators approved, and they're trying to do this in order to unseat a sitting prime minister.
Despite the legal cloud, Glick sees hope for Israel's prime minister.
I don't think this is going to work in Israel's case because, again, the public supports Netanyahu, not because we love him, but because he's an excellent prime minister. We all should be disturbed both by what's happening in the United States and what's happening in Israel, obviously, and what's happening throughout the Western world, that we're seeing more and more of this trend, and it really has to be addressed and overturned.
Israel's Attorney General will make the final determination of any indictment of Netanyahu. His office has indicated there's not a specific deadline, and it's possible the decision may not come until the spring. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The U.S. and the world said goodbye to America's 41st president, George H.W. Bush. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent Israel's condolences to the Bush family. He praised President Bush, saying he had steered the world to a peaceful transition at the end of the Cold War.
We in Israel will always remember his commitment to Israel's security, his decisive victory over Saddam Hussein, his important contribution to the liberation of Soviet Jewry, his support for the rescue of Ethiopian Jewry, as well as his efforts to advance peace in the Middle East in the Madrid Peace Conference.
The former president is being remembered as a man of quiet but strong faith. In 1992, Bush told CBN founder Pat Robertson that prayer and trust in God is vital to carrying the burdens of the presidency.
Abraham Lincoln said he couldn't handle the job except on his knees. Have you found recourse to God in prayer often in your presidency?
You have to. The more I'm there, the more I understood what Lincoln meant. The more I understood the need to have some lift, some strength greater than yourself. I especially found that at the time I had to make this, now it looks easy, but a crucial decision about committing someone else's sons and daughters into combat. And the decision rests only with the president for that, only the president. And there was certainly time and need for prayer on that one.
Coming up, a new book explores the complex relationship between President Trump and American Jewry.
God Almighty is a God of blessing. He always wants to bless His people. But how do you get that blessing? and what principles will unlock that secret.
In Miraculous Blessings, Pat Robertson shows you how to open the floodgates of God's awesome blessings in your life.
In order to have a blessing, you've got to be blessable.
Discover what the Bible has to say about God's covenant of blessing, the laws of blessing, and what are the hindrances to the blessings of God.
The words of Jesus, they are as valid as the law of gravity, and if we follow those laws, we will be blessed.
You'll see amazing true stories of everyday people whose lives were rescued and transformed by God's miraculous blessings.
But even the doctors acknowledge that this had to be a miracle.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com to become a CBN partner and get miraculous blessings today.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
President Trump is arguably one of the most, if not the most, pro-Israel U.S. presidents ever. Yet many American Jews oppose him. I spoke with author and former mayor of Shiloh, David Rubin, earlier in our studio and asked him why that is and about his new book, Trump and the Jews. David Rubin, welcome to Jerusalem Dateline.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Julie.
You've written a new book, Trump and the Jews. And you've been very outspoken about President Trump being very pro-Israel. What are you looking at when you say that? What policies are you referring to?
First of all, as far as his accomplishments, now he is taking a pragmatic approach to the Israel-Palestinian issue. He has been right behind Israel as far as the Iran issue. He did away with the Iran deal, which was suicidal for Israel and very destructive for the United States. The moving of the embassy to Jerusalem. Okay, he was the first president that said he was going to do it, and he followed through on it. More recently, he's announced the closing of the PLO office in Washington. Trump is the best president in American history for Israel. And we've had some good ones. You know, before the State of Israel was reestablished, George Washington, John Adams, Abraham Lincoln, Harry Truman, these were people who were believing Christians who recognized that Israel is important, that Israel is God's country, and that you have to stand with Israel, and that it's good for America to stand with Israel. Trump has surpassed them all.
Why did you write this book?
Well, there are 2 reasons. One is that people have been asking me, and I'm an American Israeli, so I know both sides, why do American Jews always vote for the Democrats? How Israelis can be gung-ho for Trump, and how American Jews, with the exception of the Orthodox Jews in America, who are big Trump supporters, do not stand behind this president when he has done so many good things for Israel. Well, you have to look at the history of American Jewry. Okay, the American Jewish community came to America mostly in the early part of the 20th century. They were very poor. It took a long time until they started to develop, to prosper, and working long hours. They abandoned the observance of the Jewish Sabbath so that they could work. Many of them became involved with unions, and so they naturally leaned towards the Democratic Party. In addition, we had the secularization of the Jewish community. That today the Jewish community in America is the most secular of all the religious communities in the country. And because of that, they've lost their biblical roots. They're not biblically connected anymore. Their religion is liberalism. Unfortunately, what has happened to the Democrats in recent years is that they've adopted the far left extremism which is anti-Israel. So if Israel isn't top on your list of priorities, then you're going to go against Israel.
Israeli Jews, according to the polls, really like President Trump, and the American Jews, as we've said, you know, are not so favorable towards him. So why the difference?
I could sum that up in 2 words: Jewish identification. In Israel, we have wall-to-wall, across the political spectrum, support for President Trump. Israelis love President Trump. They think he's doing a great job. And this is where it gets really interesting, because it includes secular Israelis. Those who lean a little bit to the left of the political spectrum, they love President Trump also. They think he's doing a great job. And why is that? Because they're Jewishly identified. Okay, like I put my emphasis on, yes, the Orthodox Jews in America, but that's because those are mainly the ones who are Jewishly identified. So President Trump is on the right side of history, and the right side of history is standing with the Jewish people.
We've talked about all the things that President Trump has done that have been good for Israel. They've actually been also not just good for Israel or the Jewish people, they're actually good for America.
It makes sense by American standards. And this was one of my main points in writing Trump and the Jews, that I want people to understand, by the facts on the ground, by his accomplishments, that what he is doing is strengthening the bond between Israel and America in order to help the United States of America. But we know President Trump is an America First president. He's looking first at what is good for America. That's the point. There is no contradiction between the two. So if that America-Israel connection ceases to exist, and that bond ceases to exist, then it's going to be bad for America also.
Okay, David, thank you for joining us today.
Okay, thank you, Julie.
Up next, Hanukkah, the Western Wall tunnels, and Trump's Jerusalem declaration.
Parents, the Superbook Bible app is a great way to get your child reading the Bible, because in today's busy world, we can use some help. The free Superbook Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos, discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
We had 4 jobs that didn't go right, but we didn't waver in our faith.
That's when God put on my heart that we needed to do the well.
Within a couple of days, we got an insurance refund check that we had no idea was coming.
And here we are, this year, it's just boom.
You go out and help other people and you get rewarded for it.
Get Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Miraculous Blessings.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and U.S. Ambassador David Friedman celebrated Hanukkah and the first anniversary of President Trump's Jerusalem declaration. Here's what it looked like in the Western Wall tunnels. This year's celebration enjoyed a special symbolism.
That President Trump did a great thing, a historic thing, because he recognized history, he recognized truth. The fact that Jerusalem has been our capital, the capital of the Jewish people, for 3,000 years.
1 year ago today, President Trump, on behalf of the United States, recognized Jerusalem as the capital of the State of Israel.
And 5 months later, the capital city became home to the U.S. Embassy.
Of the American embassies, said President Trump, is here in Jerusalem. And I say the place of all the embassies is here in Jerusalem. This is our capital, always was and always will be.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and U.S. Ambassador David Friedman lit the Hanukkah together on the 5th night of the 8-day holiday. At an underground section of the Western Wall near the Temple Mount, they compared Trump's moves to the ancient victory of the Maccabees.
There is no better place and there is no better time to observe the anniversary of President Trump's historic decision than here at the Western Wall, here at the Kotel, just a few meters behind where we now stand some 2,200 years ago. Jewish patriots reclaimed the Holy Temple from the Syrian Greeks.
Accompanied by the chief rabbi of the Western Wall and IDF soldiers who are alone in Israel, Netanyahu said it's not just about the past, but the future.
It is important not only for historical truth and for present-day truth, it's important for peace. Because a peace that is built on the slippery slopes of lies and slander will eventually crash on the rocks of Middle East realities.
Netanyahu praised the relations between the two allies.
It's an alliance that's based on universal values that we share: liberty, the love of freedom, justice, and truth. And for all of these things, we say, Chag Sameach, Happy Hanukkah.
On behalf of the United States of America, Tammy and I wish the people of Israel, Jewish people throughout the world, we wish you all a happy, joyous festival of Hanukkah, Chag Urim Sameach.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Western Wall, Jerusalem. As we just saw, for 8 days, Jewish people around the world celebrate Hanukkah, a holiday marking a great victory 2,000 years ago. CBN News visited the Old City of Jerusalem to take a look at the festive lights and see how one family celebrates the holiday.
Thousands of Israelis come to Jerusalem's Old City at Hanukkah to celebrate and see the lights. All over the world, Jews say special prayers, thanking God for miracles past and present, and light a special candelabra or menorah called a Hanukkah for 8 days.
This is a holiday about spirituality. This is a holiday about values. This is a holiday about connecting to God. So many Israelis come here. Everybody's attracted to the light.
Also known as the Feast of Dedication, Hanukkah is not mentioned in the Old Testament, but it is in the New Testament. Now it was the Feast of Dedication in Jerusalem, and it was winter, and Jesus walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. CBN News joined Rebecca Spiro and her family for the Jewish celebration.
It's a holiday that celebrates religious freedom and our victory against oppression and our ability to rededicate the temple.
And her children?
The presents and the parties and the lots.
We have groups coming all the time, and we go on trips, and it's fun, and it's just fun.
In the 2nd century BC, the Jewish people in Judea revolted against the Syrian Greek conquerors. The Seleucids tried to impose their culture, forcing the Jews to eat pork and forbidding Sabbath observance, Torah reading, and circumcision. Worse still, the Seleucids defiled the Jewish temple in Jerusalem and dedicated it to the Greek god Zeus. Led by a priestly family known as the Maccabees, the Jewish people retook Jerusalem and rededicated the temple. But when they wanted to light the menorah, there was only a tiny bit of sacred olive oil left.
We celebrate the 8 days that the menorah burned, which is a miracle. It was beyond nature, and also the military victory.
Eating fried foods like potato pancakes and jelly donuts is another Hanukkah tradition. Spiro's family and neighbors also have their own personal tradition to build unity between secular and religious Israelis.
Every single year we bring out a table of drinks, and thousands of people come to the Old City for Hanukkah to look around and see the menorahs and light, and then we give out hot drinks to all the people that come.
Spiro says there's a message in the holiday for today.
The world's coming up against Israel. The wolves are circling the sheep. This is nothing new. And the message of Hanukkah is that no matter what happens, our candles burn bright. And civilizations have come and gone, but the Jewish people are still here.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem's Old City.
Still ahead, for the first time ever, a Macy's Thanksgiving Day style parade in Jerusalem for Hanukkah.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. My husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Giant balloons and lots of people marked the first ever Macy's Thanksgiving Day style parade in Jerusalem for Hanukkah. And U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, led the parade. That's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And remember, the God who's watching over Israel and you and me neither slumbers nor sleeps. I'm Julie Stahl. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.